Afternoon, my Facebook family. Now I see in the paper where Mikael Phillips, the Shadow Minister of Transport and Mining, he was on behind the headlines with Dion Jackson Miller. And, they are not pleased about what's going on with the bus system. Now they promised to the Prime Minister promised to bring in bus for the students, for the school children, which is good. But the thing is this now, to what I realize, they are old buses and that won't last long, and they're going to take a lot of taxpayers' money to get them fixed. And not only that, where the children, we drive on the right, the children are supposed to let off on the left. And remember, we drive on different side of the road. Now, this bus system now, these buses that they're bringing now, they're going to let them off on the right, that are in the road. Which say Jamaican people will not drive good. And trust me, a whole heap of accident are going to happen. So, he's looking out about it, and believe me, he's right. And remember, we have to consider the children. So I'm wondering, do they care these buses come into the country to get rid of the children? Because only somebody can put it. How can you take buses like that? And bring buses like that for school? I know some of the children, they misbehaving, then jump up, then run across the road, they don't really care. These children, they are very hyperactive, and so this is going to bring a lot of accidents. So the drivers know, if these buses really are going to take to the streets, so the drivers have to be on the alert and watch out for the children, which some of them definitely now go do. So we have to just pray for the children and pray for the drivers, because trust me, a whole heap of problem out there. So please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you everybody for listening. Yes.
Talking till after that. We have with us the opposition spokesperson on transport, Mikael Phillips. Mr. Phillips, afternoon. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Afternoon to you and your listeners.
Always appreciate your time. So it's one or two things happening here, right? Either legitimate concerns that are being downplayed by government, or fear-mongering by a desperate opposition. So which is it?
Well, our concern, and I mentioned it even in my sectoral presentation, that the normal, when the JUTCR is engaging to purchase buses, what they would normally do is to bring a couple of those buses, put them in the fleet for a year, and then test how it is that they operate on our streets, be it in the rural areas or the urban areas. Then they would then engage the supplier of the buses and then, do the purchasing to see if there's anything that they have to tweak with the bus, the suspension, the transmission, and the other hardware that may come with the bus. In this instance, these buses, as have been admitted by the minister, are buses that have been retired out of the American school system. They are 10 years old and over, and they have a longer wheelbase than the buses that would normally. And in some of the areas that the minister is proposing to send these buses, the roadways and the windiness of the road will not facilitate some of those buses, hence Peter Bunting's concern on those buses. The buses now are now in Jamaica. These buses come with the doors on the wrong side. My understanding is that they are being retrofitted to go on the left side of the bus, which is now behind the driver himself. And at whose cost is these retrofitting being done? And I asked the minister in one of my statements in Parliament, questions to him, is what is the expected service contract with these buses? And they have not been tested on our roadways, and hence our concern for these buses, which are older buses now being put in the system, where JUTC, they're being operated by the JUTC, which is already being subsidized by $10 billion by the government and making a loss of an additional $11 billion, which is estimated for this year. So what is the true cost of operating these buses?
Hold that thought for me. Hold that thought for me, please, Mr. Phillips. Let's just take the break and come back. We're talking to Mikael Phillips, opposition spokesperson on transport. Remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-069. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on Beyond the Headlines. I'm Dion Jackson-Milo. We're talking to opposition spokesperson on transport, Mikael Phillips, about concerns expresses procured for the rural routes. As a reminder, we did ask the transport minister to talk to us. He said he won't be doing interviews until after he has a general press conference on the issue. So before the break, we heard a number of concerns coming from Mr. Phillips. Let's just look at some of them. So, Mr. Phillips, first of all, the concern about the fact that the buses were retired from the U.S. system, which is what you're saying, that in and of itself doesn't render them unfit for use, does it?
No. We're not saying that they're rendered unfit for use. But they're, when you have buses like that, even just like the JUTC, if it passes a certain year with X amount of mileage, your service is more expensive than if you had a newer set of buses, right? So our concern also is just what will it cost us to maintain these older buses? Because a bus like this that has gone 10 years or 15 years, generally buses within the public transport system it has a lifespan of anywhere between 8 to 10 years. Before you know that, you have to now start looking at transmission, engine, and just the lifespan of the bus. I mean, we are spending $2.5 billion annually just to maintain half of what is required for the JUTC now. So, you know, we're not saying that they can't be used, but for them to retire it in the U.S. system because it has passed a certain mileage, is it that we're just taking them because we want to? And let us just look at what it is that we propose here.
Sorry, just before you reach there, you're saying you're not saying they can't be used, but you're raising questions about us taking them because the U.S. retired them. The U.S. makes vehicles, though. So, I mean, they have access to newer fleets at lower cost than we would have.
Yes, and it would. And I'm saying that the maintenance of these buses is going to be much higher than if you had kept them in the U.S.
Completely understand that, but at the same time, there is always a trade-off between initial capital outlay and service. Almost, well, you know, don't want to get too mathematical, which is not my forte.
$1.4 billion, $1.5 billion on these 110 buses as quoted by the minister.
No, I'm saying there's an inverse relationship. The newer the bus, the lower the service is going to be initially. So you would have to actually figure out, okay, we're spending this, the service is going to be what? If we had bought them all brand new, where do we save the money? So I'm saying...
And I don't think that analysis has been done by the JUTC and the government.
Has it been done by the opposition?
No, well, when I've asked the minister and I've not been able to get an answer.
So... moving on to the other concern, because before you get to the proposal, I just want to allow you to finish addressing the other concerns which had been raised. So the other concern that a lot of people are raising eyebrows about is Senator Bunting's assertion that the buses are being brought in, you know, I had it written down, concern about whether or not it's kill off poor people, pick me with old bus. And for a lot of people, that sounds like desperate fear-mongering. And to make such a statement, surely the opposition must have some very cogent evidence or some very cogent documentation suggesting that these buses have a significant safety issue. What I heard you say is that the length of the
buses on some of our roadways
raise concerns.
Yes.
But would what should I say? Defensive driving or proper driving not alleviate those concerns?
We have engaged a number of manufacturers and suppliers of the buses here, and we understand is that for them to purchase buses, especially for the JUTC, that there has to be a standard body length, wheelbase. Then you have to look at the transmission because of our topography, and you have to look at suspension because of our topography. I don't think that these buses were retrofitted or even that was looked at in the purchasing of these buses. And when you look at some of our rural routes, especially where some of, and Senator Bunting was speaking about his understanding of a bus being assigned to a school in his constituency, and the distance and the road network to get to that school, that he would have had concerns about the bus traversing that route, seeing the length of the wheelbase and the size of the road that it would have to traverse.
But that seems to... Okay, so what I am hearing is that there are questions and concerns that the opposition has that should be answered. But then you seem to jump straight from there to condemning the buses and saying, as I said, that they're here to kill off poor people without having been able to connect the dots.
I can tell you what I said yesterday. Let me go to what it is that I said on the platform yesterday. And I said, and I will repeat it again, that the People's National Party is not against a school bus system, neither in the urban center or rural Jamaica. We have put a proposal out there. I mentioned it in my own sectoral presentation. The party leader has spoken about it, of a system that includes the existing operators in the current school bus system that now exists. Yeah? So we are saying that we would want to fix the JUTC as is, as the JUTC now is running half the fleet, even with the inclusion of the new buses, subsidized by $10 billion annually from taxpayers. And we still think that there is room in the sector for operators, private operators, to move 20,000 school children on a daily basis. So we're expanding the school bus system. What the government has proposed is really to bring in new buses. And we're saying that, and that's why I've called for a national debate on public transport, on transport overall. Because we're not saying that the plan that the JLP has proposed, or this administration has proposed, doesn't have any merit at all. But what we're saying is that we are proposing to
kill off poor people picnic with old bus does not sound like what you just said.
I am just telling you what I said on the platform, and I've consistently been saying what I'm just enunciating to you right now.
You're distancing yourself from what Senator Bunting said? Because it kind of sounds like that.
Senator Bunting, who is an engineer, has concerns about the buses, and he has enunciated his concern for the buses. And while enunciating his concern, persons have started to attack Senator Bunting for his concerns. And I think if they listen to him, listen to what he's saying about his concern about the engineering of the buses with our roadways, it's the same concern that I've said to you, that I would have preferred that these buses were brought in. They were tested for a period of time, a couple of the buses, just as the JUTC did with those buses that were brought in 2016 to run on the Stony Hill route, to see if they were capable of operating on those routes. Was that similar thing, that similar proposal that we thought that the JUTC would be operating with? By the time the minister announced it, we were told that these buses were already paid for and being shipped. So, as a parent, I would have concerns also that these buses are able to operate. But also, as I said, there's an existing system with investors who have already invested purchasing buses, who have been vetted, who have been paid by the schools, carrying students, past students. And what we are saying is that let us improve on that and expand it so that we can get more children, because it's not every student that is on well, there are a lot of students that are not on par who needs the assistance also in getting to school. So we are saying let us expand the program.
Yes, let me ask you about that.
On a daily basis.
Yes, let me ask you about that, because what I hear you saying is bringing private operators, as you said, meaning some of the existing private bus operators, private taxi operators, and so on. You want the government to get involved in a system involving drivers that many of us have concerns about being on the road in any case, and the lack of regulation that currently takes place. How do you see government involvement in that kind of very individualistic and disparate and scattered system? And how do you propose managing or regulating that in such a way as to secure the safety of the kids? Because that sounds more unsafe.
Yeah, as I said, the Ministry of Education currently runs a school bus system. Currently, it's not that we're trying to recreate the wheel. They currently run a school bus system with private operators. And what we're saying is that we're applauding that. What we're saying is that we want to just expand it, because government right now, despite that the government saying that we can afford all of these buses using taxpayers' money, right? We are still in a situation where you have a JUTC, which is a government-run entity, that is being subsidized heavily. These 100 buses that we have now, there's no facilities out of town to facilitate these buses. The principals have said to me that they are saying that the buses will park at the school. They are saying we don't know nothing about transport. How are we going to manage these buses?
All right.
Yeah. So there's still, that's why I'm saying that let us have that conversation on this school bus system. I'm sorry that it has taken this route, that it seems political, but we have said that we have a plan. The government said they have a plan. We have said that we think our plan can work, but let us tweak and get a system. As a rural MP, I could never fight against a school bus system for my children in Northwest Manchester.
I have to leave it
there.
there.
I think that our plan is better, that can move more children.
All right, I think
as proposed.
certainly warrants more discussion on both sides, and we will be taking that up another day. Have to leave it there for today. We appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Now we're going to hear from Professor Senator Floyd Morris, Shadow Minister of Housing and Sustainable Living, on Beyond the Headlines with Janet Jackson Miller, and you're going to hear, what their plans and so forth. So thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you. God bless.
I'm very pleased extremely pleased at the outcome of the deliberation. And, when I tabled the motion in 2021, I was expecting that the motion would have been debated earlier and so forth. But they say nothing happens before the time. And the timing was perfect this year, because we all sat, and Shireen, commendations to her, in terms of setting the tone. And when these things happen and you start and you recognize the source of the emotion, it helps to really set the tone of how you deliberate. And from the chairmanship to the participation of all the members of the committee, to the contribution of the presenters, those who came. And I tell you, I sat and I listened to presentation from Professor Eldemaya Shearer and Sandra Latibodier. and the PIOJ. And, it was like I was at an Ivy League university based on the quality of the presentations that were made.
What for you was the most important thing, you think, or one of the most important things to come out?
Of the
report, yes.
In general?
Yeah.
Well, the acceptance that we need to have specific legislation to protect the senior citizens and the recommendations therein to have the Elderly Care Act and to have a commission for an elderly care advocate and a tribunal to hear non-criminal cases for senior citizens. Those for me were significant, but there were other things in the report. There are other things in the report that are just as important as well.
All right. For you, Senator Golden Campbell, what for you what was most important here, most significant?